Discover the touching gift that transformed a Chinese girl's forced marriage to a lone rancher. You won't believe the journey. Ethan stood at the edge of his family ranch, the sprawling land whispering echoes of a life left behind. At 24, the weight of his father's recent death sat heavy on his chest. This place was supposed to feel like home, but it had transformed into a cage of memories that gnawed at his insides. He had been thrust into the role of rancher, caretaker, and worst of all, the last hope for a legacy that crumbled like dry earth beneath his feet. He rubbed the back of his neck, his muscles tense, caught between the longing for solitude and the relentless pull of societal expectations. Everyone around him assumed he should marry and build a family, that he would reform the ranch into something congruent with the very traditions that tightened around him like a noose. The thought gnawed at him, but he couldn't shake the fear that filling that mold would only bury him deeper in a cycle he desperately craved to escape. His father's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to keep the ranch, to never let go. "It's in the blood, Ethan," he could almost hear. But with the weight of that blood came a suffocating realization. Was it really his to hold? Or was it merely a burden masquerading as heritage? He looked at the horizon, the wild grasses swaying effortlessly, and for a fleeting moment, he envied their freedom. Ethan moved mechanically through his chores, every check of the fence and every feed of hay a reminder of what lay ahead. The loneliness coiled tighter around him as he fell into a rhythm, each repetition a hollow echo bringing him no closer to a resolution. He was simply a man marked by tradition, and he felt every second ticking toward an inevitable collapse. With bills looming and pressure mounting, questions invaded his mind. Should he sell, leave, escape the ranch with the last remnants of his father's soul? Or should he stay and bear this weight, a crown of thorns forged in a fire that had ended his father's life? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Heart racing, he fought the swell of emotions that threatened to drown him. His world of isolation was fragile, yet he couldn't see how anyone could penetrate that fortress. What if the next nightmare was that he'd one day marry someone just to fulfill the obligations of a tradition he hated? The spark of life he'd once felt, now dulled by despair, left him ache with longing for connection. Then in the vast silence he heard it, the distant sound of laughter, bright and unfamiliar on this lonely stretch of land. What was that? The melody of life interrupted the air that seemed to suffocate him. Gripping the fence post tighter, he struggled against the instinct to retreat. But the laughter called to him, a beacon among the dark. Who was it? And could it be the spark to illuminate the shadows that enveloped him? As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, a sense of urgency clawed at him. A crossroads awaited, but which direction would he choose? Would he allow the voices of those who had come before him define his future? Or could he dare to seek a new path, one filled with uncertainty yet threaded with hope? The question hovered in the air, thick and heavy, as the tendrils of anxiety threatened to pull him back into the darkness once more. Ethan took a breath that felt too heavy for his lungs, the laughter ringing again like a bell that shattered the stillness. It was a sound he had almost forgotten existed in the confines of his world, where the demands of yesterday loomed like dark clouds. With resolve tightening his gut, he turned toward the sound, setting aside the weight of tradition like a coat that had become too cold. As he walked deeper into the expanse of the ranch, each step resonated with a determination he had almost forgotten. The laughter grew clearer, and with it, a strange mix of curiosity and apprehension swirled inside him. Approaching the sound, he stumbled upon a small group of children playing near the edge of the creek, their joy infectious against the backdrop of his own turmoil. For a moment he paused, rooted to the spot, observing their carefree abandon. their cries of delight as they chased each other with squeals of laughter. It sent a pang through his heart, a reminder of the innocence he had long since traded for responsibility. Yet, observing their freedom stirred something within him, a longing not just for connection, but for the simplicity of living in the moment. As he stepped closer, one child, a girl with bright eyes and a wild mane of curls, caught sight of him and waved enthusiastically. "Hey, wanna play?" she shouted, the invitation ringing with an openness he found disarming. The children's laughter wrapped around him, and he could feel the tightening chains of his grief starting to loosen, though only slightly. Beneath that invitation lay an unspoken challenge to confront the life he had accepted without question. Did he even know how to play anymore, or was he too entrenched in obligation to partake in something as fundamental as joy? The question hung between them, silent yet loud in its implications. "Yeah, maybe," he replied, the hesitation in his voice betraying the lava of emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. The girl beamed, undeterred by his uncertainty, and began to drag him into their world of make-believe and imagination. Keeping pace with the enthusiastic children, Ethan felt himself dropping layers of the dark past that ruled him. Each laugh became a step away from burden and expectation, and toward something decidedly more authentic. He played, the memories of chores and bills fading into the background, replaced by a spontaneous camaraderie that ignited a flicker of hope. Would he continue to float through life, tethered solely by obligation? Or could this moment, this unexpected laughter, carve out a new path? As the sun began to dip lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, something whispered within him. It wasn't too late to reclaim parts of himself that had lain dormant in the wake of his father's legacy. Yet in the back of his mind, the familiar dread clawed at his resolve. Soon, he would have to face the reality of ranch life. The to-do lists, the bills, the heaviness that could return like a tide. Ethan knew the horizon of his life beckoned both risk and discovery. As he joined the children in their games, he faced a new question. Would he summon the courage to redefine what legacy meant to him, or would he retreat to the shadows of his father's expectations? In that moment, laughter echoed around him, mingling with uncertainty, transforming into a choice that could either anchor him or set him adrift. He took a breath, heart racing again, this time with possibility, and prepared to face the transformation that awaited him. Could he truly change? The laughter faded as the sun disappeared, but the shadows grew longer, deepening the internal stir. In their midst, a realization began to emerge. The road ahead might not be clear, but it was his to forge, and he would have to navigate the obstacles alone or risk losing everything he had yet to discover, including himself. Ethan's playful engagement with the children had ignited a curiosity within him that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As dusk settled, he found himself walking back towards his home, the laughter of the children fading into the distance. Each step seemed heavier now, dragging him back to the reality he often tried to escape. The softness of the evening air stood in stark contrast to the tension brewing inside him. Sitting on the porch, he leaned back in his chair, allowing the fading light to bathe him in a warm glow. Memories of the day's laughter swirled around in his mind, battling against the urgency of unfinished chores looming over him like storm clouds. His father had instilled a relentless sense of duty in him, but watching those children had stimulated an awakening. He recognized a mounting need to embrace more than mere responsibility. What did it mean to live purposefully? And could a man like him, so entrenched in obligation, dissolve into something resembling freedom? Anxiety gnawed at him as he mulled these questions over. Every commitment etched into his daily life argued against the notion of rediscovering joy. Yet the taste of laughter was still fresh, sweet and tantalizing. He needed to explore this fresh longing. It wasn't enough to retreat to the past or accept the burdens of the present. As an educated man who had cultivated a meticulous infrastructure on this ranch, he had a myriad of skills. But beyond the physical toil lay an emotional depth he had avoided, stowing it like a relic in the attic of his heart. The modest ranch offered him space, solitude, and endless responsibilities that felt safe but constraining. They were predictable. He had spent years managing cattle, crops, and bills, but could he learn to cultivate that elusive state of happiness he witnessed from the children? An inkling of hope unfurled within him, challenging the comfort of complacency. Determined, Ethan committed to seeing this through. Each morning would begin with chores, but rather than viewing them as a chain binding him, he would see them as threads weaving a tapestry of purpose. Motivation was not merely derived from obligation, but a conscious choice to redefine how he approached each day. The laughter echoed again in his mind, a gossamer thread of transcendent joy. He could hear the children's voices, bright and earnest, reminding him that play was not frivolous. It was integral to existence. The instinct to keep pursuing joy ignited a subtle rebellion against the silence that traditionally cloaked his father's legacy. In the days that followed, he began with small changes. He set aside specific time to ignite his creativity. Each afternoon, he picked a spot by the creek and brought along his sketchbook. Drawing became a meditation, a gateway that allowed his emotions to surface. At first, the images emerged awkwardly, crude outlines echoing a man trying to rediscover a forgotten rhythm, but slowly his strokes gained confidence. Through these quiet moments, he unlocked emotions that had long been dormant. The act of creation began to sprout new ideas, and inspiration poured forth, both in art and in understanding. Gradually, he came to know himself better, unearthing layers of his being buried under the weight of grief and legacy. Yet, the shadows of doubt lingered. Could he sustain this newfound enthusiasm for life? Was it merely a fleeting moment, destined to fade with another wave of responsibilities washing over him? As he painstakingly crafted each drawing, a nagging voice whispered warning. Was he risking everything for this elusive dream of happiness? Just as these thoughts threatened to consume his newfound resolve, he glanced up to find the little girl from the creek standing at the edge of his porch, her wide eyes sparkling. "Can we play some more?" she asked, bright and innocent, unfazed by his internal conflict. His heart raced once more, for in her simple request lay an undeniable truth. She represented both an anchor to the past and a beacon guiding him toward an unknown future. Could he find the courage to commit to this journey of discovery? The moment slipped away, the question lingering uncomfortably in the air like an unclosed door, beckoning him to step through. Ethan hesitated, caught between the comforting grip of familiarity and the exhilarating uncertainty that stretched before him. The girl's request echoed in his mind, puncturing the veil of his self-imposed isolation. A decision brewed within him, a choice that extended beyond mere play. It was the potential for connection, for genuine interaction that stretched the confines of his solitary existence. "All right," he finally said, surprising even himself with his eagerness. He rose from his chair, casting aside the tools of obligation. In the back of his mind, he translated that simple answer into an act of rebellion against years of restraint. She beamed, her smile infectious as they sprinted toward the creek, laughter bubbling up like a vibrant spring. The dynamic shifted instantly. As the sun dipped lower, a palette of colors unfurled across the sky. Hues of orange and pink blurred into the deepening blue, mirroring the shift within Ethan. Each step into this newfound light invigorated him, but it also unearthed vulnerabilities. Were the games they played merely a distraction from the responsibilities awaiting him? A part of him whispered caution, yet the joy radiating from the girl dispelled the doubt like a morning fog. They began to invent stories and create characters from thin air, transforming shadowy figures into vibrant heroes and whimsical creatures. Ethan's imagination danced wildly, unfurling themes of adventure and friendship. He found himself laughing freely, his laughter blending seamlessly with hers, a melody woven into the tapestry of twilight. Hours passed in blissful disregard for the looming chores. Yet, amid the joy, a persistent voice interjected, casting a shadow on his heart. Each moment spent skimming stones across the water took him further from the responsibilities that anchored him. Every laugh felt like stepping closer to a precipice, where the fall could either be exhilarating liberation or devastating regret. As the stars glittered into view, the weight of dusk reminded him of his silent commitments. The nature of his obligations loomed large: the ranch, the upkeep, the sheer weight of legacy. He didn't wish to let go, nor to forget what shaped him. But could he reconcile this playful side with the silver strains of duty that wrapped tightly around his existence? He listened as the girl recounted her extraordinary tale of creatures that lived below the creek, believing fully in the magic of her imagination. With her animated explanations, Ethan felt the fence around his own heart start to weaken. These stories acted like gentle tendrils, weaving through his self-imposed barriers to connect him with a shrouded part of himself he was beginning to recognize. She was offering him not just every fleeting moment of joy, but something even more powerful: a chance for self-reflection. Exhausted but exhilarated, he finally asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" She paused, her dark eyes sparkling. "I want to be free like the birds." Her answer collapsed all his layered thoughts into a singular question. What was freedom, if not the ability to embrace joy without the constant haunt of obligation? As the night deepened, so did his resolve to answer this question. The flicker of hope that danced within him battled against the realities of his life. With a newfound determination to unlock not only himself but also the worlds around him, he headed home, dimly aware that his journey was just beginning. Yet the challenge loomed, stark and overwhelming. Could he maintain this dynamic balance? The evening air held a promise and a dread, both urging him to explore what lay ahead. Just as he crossed the threshold of his home, a thought struck him so decisively that he paused. The path he must take was not only emerging but demanded clarity. What would happen if he actually pursued this journey? The question raced in his mind, compelling him to confront the very core of his being, to understand what trails yet remained untraversed. Ethan awoke the next morning, the sun's rays filtering through his window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. A strange urgency pulsed within him, urging him to explore the questions that had settled heavy and unyielding in his mind. The winds of change whispered through the open screen, mingling with the intoxicating scent of fresh-cut grass. It was as if the world outside had conspired to offer clarity. He had spent too many years shackled by the familiarity of rut and monotony. Today he decided he would challenge himself, confront the dichotomy between his responsibilities and his dreams. As he moved through his morning routine, Ethan felt the tension within him evolve into an electric resolve. The weight of obligation still lingered, but now it felt different, like an anchor tethering him just enough to keep him grounded while allowing a sense of freedom to grow. A series of small tasks awaited him on the ranch, chores that had loomed over him like a dark cloud. Yet, through a newfound lens, he examined each chore as an opportunity, not a burden. As he fed the horses, he found himself appreciating the beauty in their movement, the serenity of their coats glistening under the sun. Each brush of his hand against them seemed to awaken a grasping vitality, intertwining his practical life with the richness of his imagination, a bridge between duty and fantasy. After lunch, Ethan took a deep breath and ventured beyond the borders of his usual routine. He picked up a sketchbook, an unassuming artifact from his childhood, and set himself by the creek. Memories of his laugh with the girl echoed in his mind, infusing him with a playful spirit that had long been dormant. He was no longer simply sketching. He was pouring himself into every line, inviting his imagination to spill out in shapes and stories. The scene transformed as he infused the page with color. Wildflowers sprung to life and fantastical creatures roamed the soft curves of his drawings. Ethan felt every stroke of the pencil mirror a step deeper into his own psyche. The obstacles he had once dismissed began to transform. Where once he saw only chores, he now discovered rooms of opportunity awaiting the breath of creativity. But there was still a lingering doubt, the specter of responsibility rearing its head. Could he truly dedicate time to a passion when he had so many obligations? Throughout the afternoon, uncertainty gnawed at him, yet a flicker of resolve kept guiding his hand across paper. Finally, he closed the sketchbook and ventured toward the horizon of his ranch. Standing there, he surveyed his land. The vastness struck him, not as a burden, but as a canvas upon which he could leave a mark, one colored by both duty and self-discovery. Determining he would seek balance, he envisioned integrating moments of creativity into his everyday life, rather than choosing one over the other. But as the sun began its descent, a thought wormed into his mind. Was he merely deceiving himself about this newfound resolve? The day had shown him glimpses of freedom, but could he sustain this momentum? A feeling of trepidation knotted his stomach. Confronting this truth was just as vital as any of the day's endeavors. That evening, as he gazed out at the stars flickering into existence, he recalled the girl's yearning for freedom. Could he, too, embrace such a liberating pursuit? Each star held a secret his heart urged him to unearth. In that moment of solitude, Ethan felt the walls of his carefully constructed life start to tremble. Could he truly venture into this uncharted territory of self-discovery? Or would fear yank him back into confinement? He sensed an impending reckoning, a moment when he would need to make a choice that could redefine everything. What awaited him on this precipice of possibility? As he wrestled with the storm within, a sudden sound drew his attention, sharp and foreign, an unexpected arrival at the ranch. Ethan's heart raced as he turned toward the sound, his imagination igniting with 1,000 possibilities. The light of the moon cast shadows that danced across the ground, illuminating a figure against the backdrop of the expansive night. As the shape resolved into focus, it was a woman, drenched in an ethereal glow, holding something that glinted in her hand. His instinct was to retreat, yet an unfamiliar urge compelled him to step closer. She seemed neither threatening nor familiar, yet her presence stirred something deep within him, almost as if the universe had conspired to deliver him a message. Every step brought with it an urgency, a need to connect, to understand the significance of this unexpected encounter. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tumultuous cascade of thoughts in his mind. She looked up, her eyes a well of stories untold, casting a light upon the uncertainty that had shrouded Ethan's thoughts for weeks. "Not lost," she replied, a hint of a smile breaking through the tension. "Just in search of a place where dreams still hold meaning." Her words struck a chord, reverberating through the silent enclaves of his consciousness. It was as if she had pulled back the curtain on his internal struggle, exposing the deep-seated yearning that had taken root. This didn't feel like mere coincidence. It felt like the departure from stagnation he had been seeking. "What do you mean by that?" Ethan challenged himself to engage further, curious about the depth hidden beneath her casual demeanor. The woman took a step closer, revealing the delicate sculpture in her hands. It was a small, intricately carved piece of wood, the kind that might carry treasured memories for someone. "I was given this before I had to leave everything behind," she said softly. "It reminded me of who I am, of my hopes and dreams. I can give it to you if you're willing to listen." The weight of her offer tumbled over Ethan, igniting a flicker of responsibility. Taking something so intimate felt risky, yet a part of him craved the connection it represented. The sculpted memories radiated warmth, resonating with his own struggle to merge past aspirations with present choices. "I want to be free," she continued, pulling him deeper into her narrative. "But my reality makes it hard. Just like yours." The penetrating transparency of her gaze sent a shiver down his spine. In that moment, he recognized the brutality of their shared constraints. Their dreams weighed down by the chains of obligation, fear, and uncertainty. Ethan envisioned the choices laid out before him. The prospect of creative freedom that flickered just out of reach contrasted against the expectations that loomed over him like an ominous cloud. Here was someone else, navigating a similar maze of possibility and paralysis, reflecting his own mental struggle back at him. Would embracing this gift mean allowing myself to dream again? He pondered, wrestling with the implications involved. If he accepted this connection, he would have to confront his own fears head-on, to face his own reality. Could he step boldly into both pain and creativity? As their eyes locked, something shifted. Behind the light danced an undeniable power, a shared reckoning of courage amidst chaos. Would he be brave enough to grasp this moment, to embrace the shift this encounter could ignite? Ethan's thoughts spiraled around the freedom he continued to chase, and the inevitable battle with responsibility that still tethered him. Yet the notion of a shared journey illuminated a path forward that he had not considered before. As he extended his hand towards her offering, a distant sound echoed in the night, more persuasive than fear or doubt. It emerged once again, igniting a new sense of urgency within him. The arrival he had sensed earlier was no longer a murmur in the shadows. It's some raw and tangible, hinting at both potential and peril. This moment felt pivotal, a choice made at the precipice of something greater. Ethan swallowed hard, caught between his fear and a hungry desire for more than just mundane existence. What waited beyond this moment? What would he uncover on this intricate path of discovery and decision, a journey extending its hand directly toward the heart of his most profound fears? Ethan's hand hesitated just inches from the wood carving, caught between intrigue and trepidation. The woman's assurance lingered in the air, twisting around him like a whisper, urging him to confront the chains that bound him. He could feel the weight of expectation from his daily life pressing down, yet in her presence a glimmer of possibility emerged. "What's your name?" he finally managed to ask, seeking a foothold in the surreal moment. "Lee," she replied, her voice soft, yet resolute. "And you?" "Ethan," he said, his own name sounding foreign as it echoed back to him. There was an ephemeral quality in the way she held the sculpture, perfect in its imperfections, as if it encapsulated her journey. He felt as though this was more than just a gift. It represented a reconciliation of dreams long buried beneath the weight of duties and expectations. Lee's gaze pierced through the veil of his doubt. "To accept this is to embrace who you truly are. Are you ready for that?" At that moment the depth of her question surged through him. He realized he wasn't just wrestling with the decision to take a piece of art, he was standing on a precipice of transformation. The familiar self-doubt roared to life, urging him to retreat into the safety of his mundane existence. Yet another voice, one that had been silenced for far too long, urged him to leap, to confront the stagnation that clutched at his spirit. "I have so many responsibilities," he admitted, the weight of regret heavy in his voice. "How can I pursue a dream when I have no idea where it might lead? What if I fail?" Lee stepped closer, unyielding in her resolve. "What if you don't? Every great journey begins with one decisive moment. It's not about failing or succeeding, it's about discovering who you can be." His heart raced as he absorbed her words, recognizing the gravity of this choice. The glow of the moon illuminated Lee, casting her in a light that seemed otherworldly as it reflected a profound truth. Her courage ignited a spark in him, pushing him toward the edge of personal reckoning. "I want to dream again," Ethan declared, the words tumbling from his lips like an avalanche breaking loose. He reached out, fingers trembling as they brushed against the intricacies of the wood. The warm surface felt alive beneath his touch, vibrating with energy he hadn't encountered in years. "Remember, dreams take shape through action," she cautioned, the weight of her statement hanging in the air. "What you do next will define you." Ethan closed his eyes as waves of realization washed over him. He envisioned the life he craved, filled with artistic expressions, creative pursuits, and the courage to embrace his identity. An entire future unfurled before him, tantalizing yet daunting. But as quickly as that vision appeared, shadows crept back in, reminding him of everything that lay unaddressed. The distant sound that had nudged him earlier now drew nearer, a reminder of the clock ticking down on these decisions. "Ethan," Lee interjected, the softness of her voice juxtaposed with the urgency of their surroundings. "Make your choice soon. What you desire is within reach, but time waits for no one." In that moment, his resolve crystallized. He would not allow fear to anchor him any longer. "I'll take it," Ethan said with newfound determination, grasping the carving firmly in his hand. As he held the sculpture, a surge of clarity flooded his mind. This was more than just an object. It was an emblem of his intent to reclaim creativity, to defy the constraints that had choked his spirit. Yet encased in that resolve was the dawning realization: acceptance would force him to confront those very fears head-on. What awaited him beyond this encounter was a labyrinth of challenges that could just as easily lead to triumph as to devastation. As he looked back at Lee, she smiled, and in her expression he saw a challenge reflected, a promise that whatever he chose to do with his newfound intention might alter the very course of his life. Just then, the distant sound erupted into a discordant crash, a disruption that shattered the moment. In an instant, he realized that their sanctuary was under siege, the potential dangers swirling at the edges of his emerging courage. He felt his heart pulse in rhythm with the urgency of the situation testing his resolve. How would he respond to this chaos? The answer loomed over him like a specter, merging the threads of his past decisions and future possibilities into a single knot of uncertainty. Now Ethan was faced with a pivotal moment, a decision that would either confine him once more to the shadows of fear, or push him bravely into the light of an unknown, yet tantalizing destiny. Would he rise to meet this challenge, or would he allow it to consume him? The journey of discovery had begun, but its true test awaited just beyond the horizon. Ethan's heart raced as the cacophony intensified, shattering the fragile calm that had enveloped him and Lee. The sound of chaos, a sudden shattering of glass and frantic footsteps invaded his senses, propelling him into a whirlwind of anxiety. The weight of the carved wood was tangible in his hand, yet at that moment, it felt like a paradoxical anchor and a weapon, both grounding him in resolve and lighting a fire within him. His gaze darted to Lee, who maintained an unwavering demeanor. Instead of retreating into fear, she appeared steady, embodying the very essence of the resilience she had urged him to embrace. The fleeting moment they shared was transformed into something more pressing, an immediate call to action. "Ethan," she said, her calm voice cutting through the rising panic. "Now is the time to act. Trust yourself." He understood her implicit challenge. The crashing sounds were not merely external threats. They were a manifestation of his internal conflict. Could he muster the courage to confront what lay ahead? He took a deep breath, feeling the heaviness of self-doubt slowly dissipate with each exhale. In a moment of impulsive clarity, Ethan made a decision. He had been shackled by fear for too long, weighed down by expectations and responsibilities. He couldn't allow the past to dictate his future, not when the potential for growth awaited him. He nodded affirmatively to Lee, a signal that he was ready to step beyond his comfort zone. With the wood carving still clutched tightly in his hand, he moved toward the entrance of their temporary sanctuary. The world beyond that threshold buzzed with frenetic energy, remnants of untamed chaos swirling just outside. As Ethan took a step forward, he glanced back at Lee. "Stay close," he urged, suddenly feeling the responsibility for her safety intensify alongside his resolve. "Follow your instincts, Ethan," she replied, her eyes glinting with confidence. "You have the strength to face what comes." With a powerful push against the door, he thrust himself into the fray. The chaos outside was visceral. A swirl of blaring horns, frantic shouts, and shifting shadows danced in his periphery. This was not just a fight against external forces. It was a confrontation with the barriers he had built around himself. As he stepped outside, the air crackled with possibility. He consciously extended his awareness to every sound, every motion. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, Ethan embraced the storm around him. This was not the storm of his past life, which favored stagnation and suffocation. This was an opportunity to forge a new path through the tumult. Focusing on the disturbance, he could see figures darting through the streets, chaos erupting from conflicting interests. It took only a split second for Ethan to recognize that his instincts kicked in. He was not merely an observer. He would not succumb to fear's paralysis any longer. He heard a voice rising above the din, commanding attention. "Stop," it demanded, punctuated by the sharpness of authority. With instinct guiding him, Ethan shifted toward the source, a burly man forcing his way through the crowd, demanding compliance. This moment crystallized in his mind, forcing a singular realization. He could either flee or confront. Without fully processing the implications, he seized the moment. With fierce determination, Ethan moved forward, propelled by the spirit ignited within him by Lee's words. He stepped into the fray, not as a retreating figure overwhelmed by anxiety, but as a man ready to challenge what sought to bind him. As he approached the commanding figure, the ground beneath him felt alive, each step a declaration of his intent. The burden of years spent in quiet submission ignited in him a fierce desire for change. But as the man turned, Ethan felt the weight of his own choices converge into a swift onset of uncertainty. Would his challenge be met with resistance or understanding? The outcome depended not only on his next words, but on the conviction underpinning them. In that heartbeat of anticipation, Ethan braced himself for the impending confrontation, uncertain of how this would unfold. One thing was painfully clear. As the fragile strands of his old life began to fray, the true essence of who he could become was just within reach. The journey of his awakening had taken a turn, and now, standing in the eye of chaos, he was about to face the true essence of his metamorphosis. The moment of truth approached, bringing with it the lingering question. Would he rise to meet both the chaos and himself, or would he fall back into the shadows of doubt? Ethan stared into the eyes of the burly figure before him, feeling his heart thrumming like a war drum in his chest. The man emitted a magnetic authority, almost daring Ethan to make a move. It was the kind of challenge that could either spell his doom or usher in a new chapter of his life. He could feel the rush of adrenaline, amplifying his determination, urging him toward action. "Step back," the man barked, but Ethan surprised even himself with his response. He lifted the wooden carving, the tightly wound energy of his inner turmoil manifesting into a symbol of resolve. "Why should we?" His voice came out steadier than he anticipated, and it reverberated around them, cutting through the chaos. The burly man's brows furrowed in surprise, a flicker of something, perhaps respect, perhaps disbelief, crossing his features. The hesitation in Ethan's own heart echoed the profound realization. He was more than just a figure drifting in the shadows of fear. He mattered in this tumult, and his voice held weight. "Listen to me," the man barked again, attempting to snatch both attention and authority back. But Ethan felt an unfamiliar well of courage rise from deep within him. Lee's words danced through his mind, whispers of support that swelled into a roaring affirmation. "No, we won't back down." The conviction surged through him as he spoke. The surroundings faded slightly, blaring horns, frantic cries, but the moment expanded, surrounding him with clarity. This was not merely about this confrontation. It was a metaphor for every fear he'd faced in silence every time he had hidden from confrontation. Ethan noticed the hesitation in the burly man's posture, and it sparked a realization that captivated him. Fear often falters in the presence of boldness. The burly man was not invincible, he was human, and beneath that exterior lay vulnerabilities, desires, and struggles. Could there be a way to connect beyond this verbal clash? "You think your shouting will make people listen? Destruction isn't the answer." Ethan pressed on, his voice now laced with a mix of challenge and earnestness. He felt alive, pushing against the narrative that had backed him into a corner for so long. The crowd around them began to shift their weight, turning their ears toward the unfolding drama. There lay a broader spectrum of potential outcomes no longer confined to chaos. In that moment, Ethan not only faced the burly figure, but ignited a flicker of hope among the witnesses. The man's anger throbbed beneath the surface, his fists slowly unclenching as Ethan's words began to dig deeper into his conscience. No doubt this man harbored burdens of his own. Was he fueled by desperation? Was he trying to regain control in a world that seemed uncontrollable? These questions collided within Ethan, and the realization expanded that, despite their opposing positions, they were both seeking understanding. "What do you suggest, then?" the man finally retorted, his mask of authority slipping, revealing a hint of uncertainty. Ethan inhaled, sensing the pivotal shift in energy. This was an opening, a chance not just to confront but to negotiate, to form a bridge over the chaos that surrounded them. Let's talk. Together. There are better ways to handle this. His heart raced with the magnitude of what he was proposing. The act of framing a conversation felt like a delicate negotiation, balancing between mutual respect and confrontation. He stood there, realizing that while the chaos danced ominously around them, he was finally molding his identity in stark contrast to the fear and submission of his past. Lee approached cautiously, her belief in Ethan evident in her steady gaze. Each step she took alongside him thrilled him with fresh resolve. The crowd watched him breathless, and he could sense their shifting allegiance, a growing momentum that pulsed with a collective hope bubbling underneath the chaos. The burden that had worn him down began to lift, replaced by a consciousness of his potential. He was learning that confrontation did not have to devolve into destruction. It could be an opportunity for dialogue, healing, and connection. But would he have the strength to guide this dialogue toward resolution and understanding? Ethan held his ground, a transformative moment coiling tightly within him, tight, but electrifying. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with intricacies he could not yet comprehend. In what direction would this newfound courage lead him? As he prepared to speak again, wrapping his words carefully around the uncertainty of this encounter, he could feel the air thrum with anticipation. For in this moment, the past and future were colliding, and he was on the precipice of discovering if he could turn a chaotic confrontation into the possibility of meaningful change. Would he be able to build bridges or merely witness the walls of division rise higher than ever? Ethan stood amidst the rising tension, his newfound resolve solidifying like steel within him. The chaotic symphony around him seemed to fade, and in its place had come an unexpected sense of clarity. He locked eyes with the burly man, recognizing a shared struggle that resonated deep within his core. "Listen," Ethan began, his voice steady and clear, cutting through the chaos as if creating a path where none existed. "We're all here trying to reclaim something, our voices, our dreams. It doesn't have to be this way." The crowd held its breath, drawing closer, intrigued by the unfolding scene, an unanticipated dialogue that challenged the status quo. Ethan sensed the shift, the curiosity transforming walls of expectation into windows of possibility. The man blinked, wrestling with the weight of Ethan's words. "What do you mean?" he spat, the aggression wavering, a flicker of vulnerability peeking through. Ethan took a calculated step forward, fueled by the collective energy surrounding him. "Every action we take influences others. If you choose anger, it only breeds more chaos. But what if we could unite with a common goal?" In that moment, Ethan discovered his voice, the fabric of his own identity woven together with strands of authenticity, fueled by the laughter of children and the dreams of a free spirit. He was no longer the hesitant rancher trapped in the expectations of tradition. He was a man stepping into his purpose, daring to confront that which once paralyzed him. Slowly, the burly man's posture softened and uncertainty flickered across his brow. And what would that look like? Ethan took a deep breath, the fragrant scent of the ranch wrapping around him, a grounding presence amidst the tempest of confusion. It would mean listening to each other. We could create something meaningful, something that goes beyond our wants and caters to our community's need for connection and support. As he spoke, Ethan felt the warmth of recognition expand within him. The fears that had once gripped him like a vice loosened their hold, replaced by the tangible possibilities where once only obstacles stood. "I can't promise change will come easily, but I know it begins here and now," he continued, addressing the crowd that had formed, eyes wide and expectant. "We have a choice: fight to tear each other apart, or band together to build something greater." The murmurs circulated through the onlookers, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Ethan could sense the cracks forming within the fortress of anger. Hope flickered among them, emboldening a sense of collective agency he had never before considered. The burly man hesitated, his grip faltering. "You think I'm done fighting?" His voice was softer now, revealing an opening rather than a wall. Ethan nodded, embracing the wild surge of possibility that coursed through him. "I don't think you are, but I believe it's worth trying something new, something that might lead to real change, and I can help you with that." This palpable moment of vulnerability transformed the scene. The crowd leaned in closer, unified by curiosity and the excitement of the unknown. Ethan had opened a dialogue where there had been silence and tension, signaling that change could bloom in the unlikeliest of environments, and then, in a moment that shifted everything into focus, the burly man dropped the hostility, murmuring a reluctant, "Okay." Ethan caught his breath, the powerful pulse of potential thrumming through the air. It wasn't merely a small victory. It signaled the beginning of dismantling the chains of misunderstanding that had shackled them all. Moving away from the brink of chaos, Ethan turned toward Lee, who met his gaze with pride mirrored in her eyes. In her presence, he felt the symbiotic relationship beginning to weave itself between purpose and possibility, roots of a future firmly planted in hope and understanding. The chaos that had threatened to consume him now felt subservient to the potential for growth, an electrifying metamorphosis he could hardly believe himself. This moment marked not just the courageous confrontation of his fears, but the authentic emergence of his identity as someone who could influence change in a meaningful way. As the air buzzed with anticipation and newfound possibilities, Ethan firmly understood this was only the beginning. No longer merely a caretaker of a ranch, but a catalyst for connection and growth, he made a quiet vow to himself that this could extend beyond this moment, a ripple effect fueled by courage. And as the stars glittered far above, each shimmering light became a reminder of the choices waiting to be made, choices that would reshape not just his life, but the lives entwined within the fabric of his community. With a renewed spirit, he stepped forward, ready to embrace the complexities of life, his courage a powerful flame igniting with every heartbeat as he set forth into this exhilarating unknown. Ethan had not just transformed into a voice of change, he had reclaimed his existence, providing the canvas upon which to paint a future brightly alive with possibility. His journey had begun in darkness, but now revealed itself as a vibrant exploration of understanding, connection, and self-actualization. As he prepared to walk into the growing night, he knew the real legacy was not merely in the ranch he inherited, but in the dreams he dared to manifest among those who shared their stories, weaving a tapestry of rich experiences and newfound possibilities. This was his realization. Life is not shaped by what is inherited or expected. It is sculpted by fearless expressions of individuality, shaped by daring intentions and the courageous embrace of joy, connection, and truth. And with that clarity came a crown of satisfaction, firmly resting on the resolute foundation of his journey. Ethan had conquered himself, and with it, the world stretched open before him, welcoming him into the limitless expanse of potential. Now, stand beside Ethan. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who truly need to see this inspiring conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for stories of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share.